We're very excited to have you here, and welcome to the first global initiative of the Scenes Forum, where we're going to master children's mental health in the digital age. We're really thrilled to have you with us all tonight in this beautiful auditorium that I'm incredibly grateful to TAFE, who provided this auditorium this evening. I'm Professor Selena Bartlett, and I'm your host and the organiser for this important community event. It's been created for you, for each of you, and for everyone online. We have about 300 people registered online, obviously, because we have parents trying to get their kids to bed. Poor things. So first of all, I just want to begin by acknowledging the Turrbal and Yugara people as the First Nations owners and custodians of the beautiful land that we're meeting on tonight, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and their emerging leaders. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that are here today. Thank you for being here. And we really encourage your participation. We actually need your participation. It's a community event. We're in this together. It was created this way, and there's a lot of representation here from policymakers, educators, principals, parents, teachers, charities dealing with the front end, back end, such as Kokoda Foundation, which I'm very proud of, is in the Queensland Foundation dealing with digital detox. So we love our children, don't we? And our students, we love them. And we do the very best we can for them, and we want to see them thrive. However, raising healthy and thriving children has always been the hardest job on the planet, and I'm here to say it's the hardest job I've ever tried to do. But it's become super hard in 2024 in the digital age. This is the reason I went alarm bells and created these community forums to bring us together, to have these conversations. And that's why I wrote my book, Being Seen. It's actually 30 years of the science that I've done around the world to understand why people end up with mental illness, because my sister had a mental illness, and I wanted to know why. And I discovered why. And it was all about early life experiences combined with genetics. And I was writing that book, and then I got introduced to some amazing people, and then I discovered, and they said to me, update your knowledge. So I needed to update my knowledge. So as a scientist, I dug deep, and that's why the book has a phone on the cover. So at the end of tonight, we want you to leave feeling connected, because the most distressing thing for me is to be in Parliament House and be with parents and other people, and they're giving up, and they tell me it's too late, it's all over, we have no choice, we're stuck in this digital age. And I don't believe that. I believe in us, and we're a social species, and we can do things very powerfully together because we're wise, and we can make a change if we choose to. That's the aim tonight. It'll start in 3 parts. We'll lay out a little bit of the problem, not too much. The second part is all about solutions and how we can come together to provide those. You know me, I'm all about community, because that is the solution. So in that spirit, can you please turn behind you, near you, around you, and say hello to everyone and welcome each other here. And that sound is the solution. So when you leave, just remember that sound and keep making noise and create those communities, because that is the solution that we all need. So now I'd like to welcome Wade Haynes. I'm very excited that he would give his time. He is the former executive principal of Brisbane State High School. So he has a lot of experience raising maybe some of your children or other people's children. He's been doing it for 20 years. I don't know how he did it, but he's going to moderate the panel and introduce all the panel members. So thank you, Wade.
Thank you. Teachers, principals, educators. It's nice. I reckon the big group will be parents. Yeah, all parents. Okay. We get some people who work in as a professional in this area. They have a business, work in health, people in policy, governments, those sorts of areas. If I forgot who you are, I don't know which other categories to ask, but welcome. It's lovely to have you here. Thank you so much. As Selena said, I'm Wade Haynes. I have had a bit of experience in education, nearly 40 years, 13 years, the last 13 years across the road at Brisbane State High School. And I had the privilege of working with young people and teachers, there's a couple in the audience tonight, and parents to try and build communities of support as we saw our kids grow and develop from 12 or 13 years of age to 17 or 18. Now, of course, there's a lot that happens before that, and there's a lot that happens after, but that was my niche. And we saw a lot of change over 40 years as the profession moved along, society's moved along. It's been interesting. And in that period of time, I had two boys. My two boys are, Sam turned 21 a couple of weeks ago, and Isaac is about to turn 23. That means that they didn't spend any of their primary school time with a smartphone. They didn't exist. So it's that recent, okay? And while there's tremendous good that comes out of having access to technology, I'd never travel overseas without one, there's a lot of complexity that comes from having that technology and what that enables others to do with it. So they had access to, obviously, us as parents, but to their teachers, to their friends that they learned a lot from. It does indeed take a village to raise a child. All those people in the village, all of you here tonight, from the parents, the students, the staff, the policy makers, all the people who have an interest in making sure that our children are raised to their maximum potential. And we think there's an urgent need for collective effort to reshape how society, tech companies and individuals prioritise and protects our young people, our children. It's critical in ensuring that they are seen by healthy adults more than by screens. By the time you walk out of here tonight, we hope that you take away some things which are practical to you, some things that help you think about things a little differently perhaps, some things that you find really useful and practical. We're trying to provide some support and some tools and resources to help parents, educators, clinicians and policymakers in promoting children's mental health, digital literacy and overall wellness in a digital age. Now, we want to get on with it, but just as you know, learning to help your child transition from one activity to another, from one adult to another, from one place to another, all very complex, we need to take a moment to get into this space. You will benefit from hearing a little bit from each of our panellists to give some context to the helpful things they're going to say to you in a short time. What a panel. Would you please make them all very welcome? Give them a round of applause. I'm going to take them one at a time. I'm going to start, of course, with Professor Selena Bartlett, as she indicated, a neuroscientist with the School of Clinical Sciences at QUT and has over 3 decades of research in brain research. She's a registered pharmacist, has authored 110 scientific research articles. Are you tired? Including her new book, Being Seen, which is over on the desk, Master Parenting in the Digital Age. She will bring her neuroscientific expertise to the effect of smartphones and social media on early life experiences and brain and child development. Would you make her welcome? And we'll say a few words.
To say the reason why the science matters is because it's irrefutable facts, and the knowledge is absolutely clear that early life experiences shape brain development and lead to mental health disorders later in life. That's in thousands of research papers, and this is a very important fact that needs to enter all textbooks, training manuals, and policy decisions. And it is happening in Queensland, I'm proud to say. In fact, Michael Hogan is here tonight, part of Thriving Queensland Kids Partnership that's trying to bring part of that information out to all sorts of different spaces. But why tonight is because parents are struggling, schools are struggling, and it's all to do with devices. And I became aware of the massive issue in September of last year and I couldn't sleep for 2 months. My husband went to England, and he said, my God, what happened when he came back? I've written a new book, and I hadn't slept for 2 months. And it's because of Project Paradigm, who's here tonight as well. They live on the Sunshine Coast, and they work in the online child exploitation space, trying to change it and let everyone know what's happening, but also get to the perpetrators, etc. They alerted me to Australian children being targeted by the dark web and by other forces, and I'm like, why aren't we doing something? What's happening? Hit the emergency buttons. If I'm not sleeping, and they knew about this for a long time. So things really changed in September of 23 in Australia. And it's beyond our ability to want to see or hear about it, but we need to start having these conversations together to do something about it and do it pretty quickly. We don't have time to wait, and that's because of AI-enabled chatbots and messaging apps, and we'll show you a little bit of that. In fact, maybe we should turn to the first video.
I've been a child therapist for well over 12 years, but the kinds of children that are ended up in my therapy office are nothing like I've ever seen before. When I tell people about the kinds of things that I'm seeing on a regular basis, they laugh, they don't believe me, or they go into shock. I'm seeing children under 10, talking about extreme sexual behaviours. I've got young boys telling me how they're abusing their bodies, desperate to get ripped like the fitness influencers. I've spent my career specialising in online harms and technology, so maybe I just see a certain type of child. But I'm inundated with the same issues over and over again. Children being sextorted, groomed, cyberbullying, struggling with body issues. And yet, when I talk to the children, 90% of the time, they don't tell their parents what's happening. There's something big happening beneath the surface. We're about to see an avalanche of many more children struggling with the issues I see in the office.
Your children will likely see adult content online. You aren't going to stop it, but what you can do is either ignore this uncomfortable fact or do something to mitigate the damage. And here's some uncomfortable facts that makes many parents stick their head in the sand. If you're thinking, but not my child, a report from 2019 found that even though 75% of parents thought their child had not yet seen this naughty content, over 50% of these same parents' children had seen when asked. And the reason you can't control this from happening is that most of these children find it accidentally on social media. It might pop up on social media feeds like Snapchat, or a friend shares it with them. So it's likely going to happen.
I just got my hands on screenshots from a test Snapchat account, and you're going to want to see this. In June of last year, an attorney set up a test account on Snapchat. She used a brand new cell phone with a new phone number, and she identified as a 16-year-old female. She did not allow Snapchat to access any of her contacts. There weren't any loaded on the test phone anyways. Snapchat then prompted her to connect with 200 people she may know, also called the quick add feature. I'm about to show you the users that Snapchat was recommending to a 16-year-old girl. Okay, so we have Pimp Ash. We have Big Fine Ass. We have emojis for money, alcohol, and pills. We have Demonic God. Sexy Zach. There's BNWO, which stands for Black New World Order and is a fetish term. There's Send for Dick. Girl on Girl Buyer. Add if you send, referencing nude photos. Thick Dick. Add me for fun, and I trade and send. Despite Snapchat saying that these were people she may know, she did not know. So once the 16-year-old female test account was set up on Snapchat, she decided to add a couple people who Snapchat recommended to her. She clicked add on a few accounts, starting from the top of Snapchat's recommendations. Very quickly, the private messages started coming in. Messages saying, would you be interested in free nudes or trades? A message saying, can I send you a dick pic? To which she did not respond, though he proceeded to send multiple photos of male genitalia. A message saying, contest, youngest, cutest girls to send sexy pics get $50 in a Cash App deposit. Underage may join. As a reminder, this was a Snapchat test account set up on a brand new phone with no connection to any contacts, self-identifying as a 16-year-old girl.
Introduce the rest of the panel. Can you welcome Melanie Pilling, weekend editor of the Courier Mail and the Sunday Mail. She's worked in media for 23 years, first as a journalist writing stories across crime, politics, entertainment and lifestyle, to run a major metro newsroom managing over 100 reporters. She will discuss the origins and stories of the Let Them Be Kids campaign and how we can affect change at policy and government levels. Would you make her welcome, please? Can you talk a little bit about your expertise as a parent, as a community member?
Yeah, so I started my career in the year 2000 as a cadet journalist at the Gold Coast Bulletin. And to put that into perspective, that was a year when we had to queue up for the only computer in the newsroom that had the internet. And we had to book in 5-minute increments as to, if we wanted to try and do some research for a story. So I guess in 24 years, we've come a really long way in terms of access and connection. I went through my career as a journalist, as you said, covering things like crime and courts. And I was one of the very late adopters of social media in the newsroom. And there was a really good reason for that, which I think is a story that will resonate both with parents and children. And that is because I was a court reporter, so I was writing some pretty terrible stories about some pretty terrible people. And my view was that if I was having a social media profile, regardless of the privacy settings that I put on it, that I was exposing myself to some pretty awful characters that could find out information about me, potentially use that to track me down. I didn't want anyone knowing what I was doing on the weekend, where I was going to be. And so in the end, for my career, I did have to get a social media account. And I did everything that I possibly could to lock it down. But a recent security scare in my current job, I had a professional look at my profile and I thought I was completely locked down, and they found my address like that. They found everything out about me like that. So it was a really big lesson for me. And I guess particularly now that I'm a parent, I'm a parent of an 11-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy, so completely opposite ends of the spectrum. But technology is a part of our lives, so social media is a part of our lives. And I consider myself a good parent. I consider myself a really educated person, but I must say that as part of my job and my role specifically in establishing the Let Them Be Kids campaign, which I will talk about in more detail later, but basically it was advocating for the government to raise the age of access to social media from 13 to 16. In creating that campaign, I have realised just how naive I am when it comes to the social media harms. And so we have certainly at home implemented some new strategies, but by no means am I or my husband perfect. You made the point about taking technology away on holidays. With a 2-year-old on long car trips, yes, I've given him a phone, I've given him an iPad, and coming back from those holidays and having to wean him off, I've caved. Absolutely I have. The only place where I've not caved yet is in allowing my 11-year-old to have social media. And I think I know what's ahead of me in terms of the arguments, in terms of but everybody else has it, why can't I have it? I think she thinks she's the unluckiest 11-year-old in the country right now, given the campaign I've just launched. But as part of this campaign, I've spoken to parents who have lost children, and that changes your perspective completely.
Yeah, stay strong. The word no is the hardest word as a parent, to say it over again and stick to it, but it's so incredibly important that they know some boundaries. So Good on you. Sam Jockle is an award-winning entrepreneur and content producer with over 13 years of experience, known for founding Parent TV, an innovative parenting platform, and building School Mum, an online community with over 460,000, that's better, you like that number better? Members, recognised by the World Summit Awards globally, winning the Learning and Education category for the Quality Education SDG. She's also taken on the role of producer, tackling the tricky topic of parenting in modern times, which will soon be released in the documentary Scene. Make Sam welcome, please.
Hello, everybody. Feels like a privilege to be here, and I just want to honour Selena and the amazing work that you were doing in this world for our kids, because it really matters. I feel like my stories are a little bit different. I hear that, I'm like, wow, all those things. I actually was married at 21 and had my first child at 24, so I have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, so I'm in the thick of it. But I feel like my life kind of happened the other way around in terms of, in some ways, having kids young. I wasn't super young, but young enough to not know what I was doing. For me, it's interesting as I look back on my journey and all of those things, because I think that right from the start of having my kids, I really knew that there was a disconnect for me. Something didn't feel right. That relationship wasn't what maybe I'd imagined it was going to be, or what I'd seen on movies or TV or whatever, and I found myself actually wanting to be away from my children more than wanting to be with them, and work was the thing that I was chasing in some ways. And funnily enough, I turned my work into Parent TV. As I look back now, I think that that was how I was coping with the feelings I was having with my kids, and felt hopeful that maybe if I gave this my time and attention, somehow I could figure this thing out that I couldn't quite figure out. And fortunately, I'll probably talk more about it a bit later. Parent TV really opened my eyes and helped me truly understand. I knew that I needed a lot of help, and I solved that problem for myself, turning it into my work, because that's what I knew how to do. So yeah, it's been a pretty wild journey over the last 10 years just to understand what Parent TV is. Think of it a little bit like Netflix for parenting resources. So we have 2,000 videos on our platform. We've worked with over 50 experts globally, mostly in the allied health professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, paediatricians, occupational therapists. Then you've got Maggie Dents and Dr. Justin Colson, some really well-known parenting educators as well. Most of our videos go for about 5 minutes, and really they're mapped from birth to 17, really just there to help give parents timely information in the moments that they need it. I had no idea what I didn't know walking in. If anything else, at the point that I'm at with my kids, who are nearly 17, 14 and 10, I'm just so proud of the work that I did to learn what I learned, to be for them what they needed me to be. And I know it in my bones that it matters, that we need to understand who our children are and what they need. And if we can be brave enough to give it the attention that it needs, and it's rough because you have to face yourself in all of that, it is our kids. I feel like we are our kids' only hope in some ways, and the answers are there, and it's hard work, and I'm here to just say, it's worth it.
The documentary, Kobe. Thank you.
biggest concern really is the rates of anxiety and depression. That's the quality of the children's childhood. It's just going down the googler. We're going, what's happened? And we're blaming devices, and devices are certainly not helping that. They're a contributor. In my generation, 80% of people lived around their extended family, grandparents and stuff. Children don't have that anymore. The financial pressures are more and more. Both parents have to be at work. We don't seem to be understanding the fundamental needs of our children, and we're ignoring that and making them fit into our economic model, and it's just not working. It's destroying their childhood.
As adults, we are juggling all the balls, and we're really stressed, and we do not have enough time to tune into ourselves, and because of that, I think we find it really hard to attune to our children.
After 20 years of studying the brain, I was shocked, absolutely shocked, and being a parent myself, to learn that this parent-child interaction was actually foundational brain building block towards developing a healthy brain. We always think that parenting is just a natural thing, which is why we just talk about breastfeeding and changing nappies, but it's not, it's a skill set.
I don't know how to be a dad. I pretend and I fly by the seat a hell of a lot, but I just don't know how to be a dad.
I was getting very frustrated because I was saying all the right things. I'm doing what the book says to do, and it's still not working. This is all just BS.
Parenting was actually, for me, more difficult than getting clean and sober.
I wasn't reacting as bad as what I was, brought up with, so I thought I was doing better.
You cannot use logic to escape the programming of your own childhood, because all of us swear up and down that we're going to do better, and then what will happen is, in the heat of the moment, you will hear your mother or your father coming out your mouth, and you will be wondering, why does that keep happening?
They're wanting a solution for how to change their kids' behaviour, and I tell them a solution that's based on them changing their own behaviour. To know yourself, you have to know where you come from. And to know where you come from, it means knowing your own parenting.
I just snapped at her more, I just spoke to her more rudely, because that's what happened to me, and that's what happened to my mum, and that's probably what happened to her mum's mum.
I'm a child of the 50s. We were belted heaps. We were shamed, shut down, told not to cry, and the stories that I created from my childhood took a lot of therapy to undo.
You hear those things that were said to you and the things you say to yourself, and you've got to really, really work hard to change that.
That's the hardest job that I have in clinic, is finding how do I make sure that parents understand I'm not being generous in saying, that I need you to think about your own mental health. I actually need you to do it for this kid.
No one wants to talk about it. It is deeply painful and very emotional, because we're always looking somewhere else for the problem, and I did that for 20 years. But this is where the real gold lies, is opening that treasure box and really stepping back, taking a deep breath, looking inside. If the box stays locked, you can't make any changes. You just keep passing it on generation to generation, and that's why what we're doing with this subject is we're breaking cycles. We always talk about leaving your house as a legacy. I've scrapped all of that. I say you're leaving yourself in them as a legacy. And that is the most beautiful gift that keeps on giving forever.
Thank you, Sam. Our last panellist tonight is Jeff Brand, Professor of Communication and Media at Bond University. Jeff is the father of 3 young adult males with whom he has played video games, read books, watched movies and TV shows, and dabbled in social media. He's also the author of books on news and current affairs and national broadcasting, a consultant to government and industry, and author of the Digital Australia and Australia Plays series of national audience surveys, which has run every 2 years since 2005. Would you make him welcome, please?
Thank you very much, Wade. And the lapel mic is also quiet, so may I borrow your microphone? Thank you. First of all, could I extend my congratulations as well to Selena and observe that it's a brave exercise that you're embarking on. The Academy isn't always very friendly to people who reach out to community to make a difference rather than to engage just in academic research. I said just. So this is a very powerful moment, and I'm so honored, like our other panelists, to be a part of this. And like all of my colleagues here, this is personal for me. I'll start with my origin story as a young child, but I'll move quickly into adulthood. I was left alone with television through most of my childhood, and I developed a very strong interest in the media and children using media. So my doctoral research was on kids using television, and when I started engaging in that research and reading a lot more from a social cognitive perspective, in other words, how we understand our world, our social world, through our observations, I became quite frightened, to be frank. And so being a parent adds to that fear and that horror. And in my research, what I've been doing over the last really 35 years is attempting to demonstrate that parenting has to start with thinking about the whole environment, and particularly the media environment. Because it's one thing to control the toys in the cot, right? It's another thing to turn on a screen or hand over a phone and allow the world to come to a child. It is chalk and cheese. We used to worry about operant conditioning, where a child would hurt themselves, and on for example, a hot stove is the classic example, and the child learns very quickly. And as parents, we protect our children from having those experiences. What we don't do very well is protect them from all of the large, scary world environments that they can be exposed to. So when I immigrated to Australia 30 years ago, my research on media led me immediately to do work for I did SBS work, but I worked also for ACMA, the Australian Communication and Media Authority, which was before that the Australian Broadcasting Authority, the ABA, a series of studies on children having access to media. And one of the most frightening things for me was that doing a study on children's access to media content that involves advertising was becoming something that even the regulator couldn't control. The time of day that certain content would be available to children through old school television was something they couldn't control. And then we started to ask the question, well, this internet thing is starting to happen. As Melanie said, it was in a place where they gave us big brick computers back in the day to work on, and they were slow and they were disconnected. When they started to connect, we asked the question, well, who's going to manage all of this? If not me as a parent, who? So I then discovered that we have laws in Australia that don't appropriately acknowledge the kind of material that's out there. And the simplest example, and not nearly as scary as some of the examples we've been talking about so far, is video games. In Australia, we classify films and television programs that are made for adults with a big, nasty, black R18+. But for video games, we said, well, adults don't play them. They're only for kids, so we don't need an R18+. So games like Grand Theft Auto, suggests crime, doesn't it? We made available under an MA15+ category. We shoehorned it. So I come at this issue from the point of view of, first of all, thinking that media is great. It is a part of our lives. It's a window into the world. It provides a high level of cognitive richness, not to mention affective richness for all of us. Who doesn't love a great story? But leaving children to their own devices, and I mean that word with a capital D, and letting them take them into their rooms and not nurturing them with them is horrifying. And so what I want to leave you with from my starting bit is that in very much the same way, we read to our children. And there is nothing, all of you who are parents, if you read to your children, you know there is nothing so special as a child sitting next to you or on your lap, and you're turning the pages of a book and sharing a story and engaging in the rhyming, and they reach up and they touch the side of your head for contact, and you say, this is the most beautiful moment I could possibly imagine. We don't do that with electric devices, do we? We don't do that with games and social media. Why we don't engage when our children start to explore social media and on-ramp them is beyond my wildest comprehension. Same thing with television, same thing with social media and games. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah. I don't know about you, we're just doing introductions, but already I'm picking up a number of themes. This is very human, it's about connection, it's about community, and it's not easy, so let's explore that a little bit further. You showed us a fairly confronting video, Selena. I'm interested in what's happening with children's mental health in 2024. How does being seen more by screens than by people have an effect on brain and child development? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So just when a baby's first born, or even in utero, the first cell born is a brain cell. And so when the baby's born, it only has attention networks which sit in the prefrontal cortex. And the only job is for it to gain attention from the caretaker, the parent, so it can be fed, it can have love, security, and be safe, right? So there's a whole network just for that. And now, because people are breastfeeding on phones and in playgrounds and at work and we're on the screens, it means that phones and devices have come between children and adults. And so I interviewed the leading expert. There's an old experiment called the still face experiment. Some of you may have heard of it, where a baby's sitting in a high chair and the parent goes still face from being interacting with the baby, then goes, and then the baby just starts being dysregulated and trying to get attention and jumping out of the high chair. And so Tracy Tawari Dennis in New York, she's coming on my podcast about this, she published a paper. Instead of the still face for the parent, she did it with screens and got the same effect. And so we actually now have still face baby syndrome in Australia, where babies aren't learning how to use their faces because we are a social species and 50% of our brain is dedicated to social cognition and being together face to face. That's how we were built over 200 million years of evolution. And so where we are right now and why 2024 got so big is because it's the normalization and the digital immersion and so many pieces of evidence saying you've got to be part of this revolution. But we just need to sit back, have a community conversation and say, hey, this is really impacting our children's mental health. And I know that Jane Rowan is here, who's the CEO of Eating Disorders Family Australia, and she can tell you, and I'm sure she'd love to come and talk to you afterwards, we were in Canberra together, and we have 7-year-olds in eating disorder clinics now, and we have 5-year-olds on porn sites. And it's because of the nature of the technology is so powerful and the algorithms are so powerful. Messaging apps are everywhere. And people around the world are targeting Australian children because our phones are the least safe. And it's the youngest age. So when I leave a restaurant and see a 9-month-old baby on a smartphone in a pram, it's really, and you know so much, but you can't say anything. So we just need to keep having these conversations to be seen with each other, to support each other, and to recreate a bit of a village, because everyone's got disconnected away from each other. And so when we have these conversations, and we say parents and teachers and like society, we need to see each other. We need to be seen. And I was on a home homelessness panel yesterday for 4 hours, and Trent Dalton was there, and he said the reason that he survived his childhood was because of love. And that's why I wear this ring and why everything's yellow. So when you leave, know that you're loved and being seen.
Thank you. Mel, we might move on to you. You started talking a bit about the Let Them Be Kids campaign and about why you started that up. Maybe you can go a little deeper there, and perhaps you can talk to us about a response, if any, from government, and this thing. Maybe you could explain the rate the risk quiz.
Yeah, sure. So News Corp Australia launched the Let Them Be Kids campaign in May, and as I said, the purpose of it was to get the federal government to intervene to help parents and to help them by raising the age of access to social media from 13 to 16. It is really easy to set up an account when you're underage. All you have to do is put in a fake birthday. It's literally that simple. So we were calling on the government to not only raise the age, but to demand that the tech companies utilise age verification technology. So that was the crux of the campaign, but I guess the reason it was born was because we started to see trends around youth suicide, eating disorders, a decline in mental health. They're not new topics that the media just suddenly started to cover. We've been covering them for decades. But what we noticed, and you know, probably pretty late in the piece, and not just News Corp, all media cover these stories. What we sort of, the conclusion that we came to was that it was escalating. These issues were escalating at a really rapid rate. The suicide rate in 15 to 19-year-olds was skyrocketing, and actually when you put it on a graph, you can actually see that at around 2012, the line, which has been increasing, don't get me wrong, it's been increasing for a long time, but the line at 2012 goes from sort of here to here. And it's the same with eating disorders. I've worked with Jane really closely. I've worked with another expert at Flinders University, and he crunched the numbers for me one day, and it came out that the eating disorder rate in 10 to 14-year-olds since that same date in 2012 has risen 200%. And we just couldn't sit on our hands. Like, we could continue to report these stories, sure, but we couldn't sit on our hands and not say to ourselves, what can we do as a media organisation, as an organisation that has incredible reach, and as an organisation that has the ear of government? What can we do to try and help resolve this issue? Which I need to say, it's not just a screen time issue, it's a public health issue, and in my mind, it's a child protection issue. This is about protecting children, and as parents, as educators, that is also our job, but it is also a critical role of the government. And that's why we developed the campaign. And as I said, what was really important to me was that I had the support of parents, because at the end of the day, we're all at home trying to work out the best way forward in this digital world, raising our children with all of these influences and distractions. And so on the day that we launched the campaign, on the front page of all the Sunday papers, News Corp papers in Australia, we had the beautiful faces of children who had taken their own lives because of something that happened to them on social media. There are 11 of them. I'll just go through a couple of the examples, and they really resonated with me. So there was a 17-year-old boy from Victoria who was the victim of sextortion. You might have heard of him, Mac Holdsworth. I spoke to his dad a lot. I spoke to him today just to check in to see how he's going. There was a little girl, Tilly, from Orange, or Bathurst, sorry, in New South Wales. She had a fake image created through AI by a school student at her school put her head on a naked body and started circulating it. And she discovered that that had happened while she was on the school bus home. And it didn't take long after that Tilly decided that she couldn't cope and she ended her life. Jane and others that I've spoken to have had to help their kids through eating disorders. There's just countless examples of children who've been impacted, and ultimately that's why we started this campaign. The government initially was wonderful. Within 24 hours of launching the campaign, both the Prime Minister and the opposition leader came out in support of the campaign. Not specifically raising the age, but said, this is a wonderful campaign. Yes, we need to address what social media is doing to our kids. Let's be frank, the tech companies have no interest in protecting your children. They have absolutely no interest. If you've ever tried to have a post taken down, it is near impossible. And something that these parents said to me about not only were their children impacted by what happened to them on social media, but a couple of them were able to find out how to end their lives on social media. That content exists, it's easy to find, the tech companies won't take it down. Peter Dutton has since come out and said that if he was to win the next election, that within 100 days he would introduce the age limit being raised, and that he would introduce age verification. All 4 state premiers that we, where we launched the campaign, so here in Queensland, New South Wales, Adelaide, South Australia and Victoria are all on board. The Premier here, Stephen Miles, has been really strong in his comments against social media, but this is actually a federal government issue. The state governments can't raise the age. It's under the communications portfolio. Just quickly, the quiz that you mentioned, it was really important as part of this campaign that we weren't just saying, here's a massive problem, good luck. And so with Selena's help, I'm very grateful to her for the help that she gave to allow us to put this quiz together, which 4,000 parents have so far filled in, and it basically rates your child's risk in terms of some of these mental health issues. And I mean, some of the findings, they're not shocking to me, but in terms of the high use of social media, the lack of understanding from parents about what their kids are watching, and probably the other one would be the lack of, I guess, rules or restrictions. And like I said, I don't for a minute sit here and say it's easy. It isn't. We're all living it, and I know you are too. So that's the Let Them Be Kids.
Which means connecting with our kids is pretty important, isn't it? So yeah. Sam, it probably takes us to you. You founded Parent TV as a solution to reconnecting with children and students. How and what does it take to achieve this?
It takes everything you've got. I guess part of my story, I feel like I like the idea that I sit here as a parent, probably more so than sit here as some kind of expert, and it's always the role I've liked to play in Parent TV. My personal content is on there. I've sought the support of, I guess, experts in the field. What I will say is that I feel like nearly no parent would know more than me about this as a parent in terms of the lengths that I've gone to over the last 10 years. I've sat in on every single one of those video shoots of experts and all of the content. And as I said before, I have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I still struggle in my home. And sometimes I worry and I think, how on earth can a parent who hasn't had the privilege that I've had in terms of their education and really and truly knowing what is going on, being able to navigate this in their homes. I think the biggest thing for me, and this is where it gets interesting, is that I actually saw things falling apart to a degree in my own home while I was doing Parent TV with my kids, while I knew all of the things. And in a way, was kind of brought to my knees via a set of certain circumstances. And what I realised as I had to face the truth of all of that was it didn't matter how much I knew as a parent in terms of information, that wasn't helping my kids. They actually needed me to be in our home with them. And all the work that I was doing meant that I wasn't able to be in our home with them as much as they actually needed. And the biggest game changer in what has transformed me as a parent and my kids has been really taking stock and truly coming to understand child development and that our kids need us. They need our attention, and it's actually everything. And we talk about protecting kids from the outside, and this is kind of what I've come to realise with my kids as well. As much as we can put measures in place and things on our devices and everything for our kids, like, yep, sure, absolutely, step one. But the biggest protective factor for your kids is actually your time and attention. And what I've learned through the research and all the work that I've done and witnessed in my own home, that where you give your time and attention is what you actually communicate to your children has worth. So if they're not getting that from you, if your work's getting it, if sport's getting it, if cryptocurrency or your shares or whatever it is, your garden is getting it and not your kids, how that's landing for them in a very unspoken way is, well, I'm just not worthy of my mum and dad's attention. And that's what we need more than anything else. And I know that if you want to keep your kids safe from predators online, fill their cup up so they absolutely know they have worth and they don't go looking to feel worthy and seen and valued by just someone. And I say that, and I don't share this very often, but I was that kid. I was that kid who made a decision to trust an adult that I shouldn't have, that had a significant impact on my life. And I've done a lot of work to unpack that because I didn't want that for my kids. And what I realised was happening for me back then is someone made me feel like I had value and worth because my parents were busy working and they were doing the best they could. I don't throw them under the bus for that. Like, they've got their own story. But I know, and I can say it, and I was repeating that in my family. So really owning that, understanding my own childhood, understanding child development and what my kids needed, and just being there for them. Like, my kids are fine. Like, they really are. No issues. They just have my attention and they know it. They know when they get home, and I stop everything and I look up for 2 minutes and say, hey, how was your day? How was it? And I'm not busy trying to go anywhere else. Like, that's all it is. It's actually really simple. We're just kind of missing them because we're all really busy trying to survive, and our kids need us to work out how to meet our own needs so we're not surviving, so that we can step in with presence for them.
Thanks for sharing. Jeff, you advocate for creating a shared online world with your children. What does that look like, and how can it help?
I just want to riff very quickly off of what you just said, Sam. I think when we think about the housing affordability crisis, cost of living, the pressures we're under economically in this country right now, How do we do that? You just shared a pathway that was very powerful, so thank you for that. I identify with it. Again, as I said at the beginning, reading to your children is a way of providing them with an interest in media access, in this case books. And it's a way of introducing them to literacy, reading literacy. We know that reading literacy is directly related to educability. We know that education is related to overcoming some of the tyranny of the cost of living crisis, because we can get an education and presumably earn a good living. When it comes to video media, it's a completely different story, because as we've heard and as we all know, you don't have to be more than 9 months old to consume content from a screen and see a world in that screen and be able to decode or read that. And sure, it's much more complex as we move along different types of narratives and stories and we get to news and current affairs, but literacy starts very early. And the best way to develop social media literacy, video game literacy, television literacy, heavy metal literacy, book literacy is to read, in quotes, with your children. So play video games with your children. If you didn't, and they're young teenagers, what Sam just said, just say, what are you playing? Can you teach me? Flip the literacy. I remember talking to a senator who said, I don't have time to play video games. And I said, no, Senator, you're not literate. You're just afraid to admit it. That's what people say when they're not literate. I don't have time. Go back to early research on reading literacy. People who didn't read would say, I haven't had time. We don't have time for a lot of things, but we need to make time for literacy of all media for our children. That includes online music streaming, and it includes social media. And so I have a story to tell, which is a two-part story. One is I caught one of my sons with pornography. You can do all that you want. And I simply said, when's the last time you saw me showing you that on a phone? That hasn't happened, has it? So what are you doing? And let's discuss it with your mom. It's a family issue. He didn't like that idea very much. The other thing that happened, another son, and they're beautiful, beautiful young men, and they're both professional and working hard and trying to get a house and all of that. My son came home. I mentioned Grand Theft Auto earlier, and he was about 8 years old, and he said, Dad, what's Grand Theft Auto? And I thought, oh, for crying out loud, here it comes. I've lost control. And I said, why do you ask? And he said, well, so-and-so's brother, because he had just come from a friend's house, had it on their PlayStation. And I said, did you play it? He said, no. And I said, why not? And he said, because I didn't think you'd want me to. That doesn't happen very often. In fact, that's the only time that ever happened. But just to be clear, but it was one of those moments where you think, oh, winning, right? And there's so few and far between. And so I want to finish answering your question, Wade, by leaving you with this point. Jaron Lanier, who coined the term virtual reality, which he says is an oxymoron, of course, but he coined the term virtual reality, wrote a book about, and it's an inelegant title, 10 Reasons Why You Should Close All of Your Social Media Right Now. He explained that social media isn't what we think it is. How many of you think that social media is an advertising platform? Right? We all do. We're told that. He made a compelling argument in that book to say, no, you're wrong. Social media is a behavior modification platform. And listening to Mel's explanation of what has happened to so many young people tells us we know that is true. And if you're going to hand over a behavior modification platform to your children, that is something you need to think deeply about.
Thank you, Jeff. I love your example about your child who is self-regulating. That's our goal, isn't it? We want them to be self-regulating in the end, make good choices, make good decisions. Now, panel, work with me. Okay, let's introduce one of our special guests. I'm going to introduce Abby Dargan. Abby's the Queensland State Education Manager for YSafe, bringing many years of experience in youth development and digital safety to this role. Her extensive work with young people in diverse education settings, including schools, boarding houses, international campuses in the US, has equipped her with a deep understanding of the challenges and opportunities facing today's youth. Abby joined YSafe in Brisbane. She's committed to delivering exceptional cyber safety education to schools and communities throughout the state, empowering the next generation to thrive in the digital age. Would you make her welcome, please?
Thank you very much. I don't think I've ever had such a lovely introduction. I couldn't have written it better myself, even if I did write it. I just would love to thank everyone for their time this evening, and I'm not going to take up too much of it, I do promise. But my name is Abby, and I am Queensland State Education Manager. And before I get too far into it, I do just want to thank the lovely panel for this discussion. It's so needed and so incredibly relevant. For us, YSafe, we are the education arm of Qoria, and Qoria is an international company. Myself, I work and have spoken to over thousands of students, staff, parents across the course of the year. The global company works with 29,000 schools internationally. So everything that we say is tried and tested, and it's coming from real life experience. Now, we are at the coalface of it. We do see it all. Unfortunately, that means we see the negative stuff along with the good stuff. We do see the great positive impact that tech has on children, but we do also see the negative consequences that come from making uneducated choices. Now, with this, our technology, it's very much embedded into the software that schools can use, and from there we can monitor, access and view content and basically children's activity online. We give parents a sense of visibility in this space. Sadly, this does mean that our technology actually responds to about an incident every couple of minutes or so. So in my short time up here this evening, that we would have responded to about 2 to 3 instances. Now, with this in mind, I do want to offer you some practical insights, because it is not all doom and gloom, and I'd really love to have you all leaving this evening, like Selena has said, feeling empowered and equipped to go and support your children that you love and care for. Now, I do want to provide some suggestions while we do wait for these big tech companies and government to really kind of take some action in this space. So let's discuss age verification, because it has come up this evening, and it does seem like a very simple and very attractive solution, but unfortunately it does have its own flaws. Age verification, for those who are a little bit unsure, is very similar to like checking ID of someone trying to buy alcohol. Unfortunately, the internet doesn't quite work like that. And what we will see is that the global safety tech industry is very clear on one thing, and that's that age verification, or AV, if you don't mind, will not meet those aims, those safety aims. It is very hard to hear, but that is the unfortunate reality. Now, for our teens, age verification is trivial to bypass, and they probably have fun while they do it. They use a technology called a VPN. So VPN is kind of like sneaking in the back door of the internet. Your identity is hidden, and you can kind of get up to no good and no one knows what you're really doing. In Australia at the moment, we see that about 60% of teens are already using VPN technology to bypass school security settings. And when we see age verification not just spoken about, but actually trialled in the US, we looked at Louisiana and Utah, we saw VPN usage skyrocket by 1,000%. Now, in this space, we have to acknowledge that teens are incredibly resourceful. They are resilient, they have the time, they're also motivated. So they are the people who are going to hack and bypass these settings, especially if we look at using age verification, unfortunately. But that's our teens. And what about our young people? How do we prevent them from stumbling across inappropriate content, pornographic, explicit content online? Because as we've mentioned and covered here this evening, they're not finding it and searching it out of their own curiosity. It falls in their lap. So how do we prevent that? Well, we have to acknowledge where they find it firstly. So they find it on a parent device or a shared device. They find it from internet previews when they're just searching and researching things, the suggestions pop up. They're also finding it on messaging apps, platforms, gaming, social media. They're finding explicit content there. And unfortunately, age verification just does not address these issues. Now, there are many other issues with AV, and what we do know is it will unquestionably, undoubtedly push teens towards less safer, less regulated, less funded spaces of the internet, like Reddit and X. As much as we hate to admit it, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, they do get a lot of the attention, but X has actually just recently passed a new guideline saying that they are okay if the nudity, explicit content is shared consensually on their platform. Now, adults also having to get a driver's license to access the internet is an issue with AV. And I don't know about you, but many adults in the country, if they're going to have to get a driver's license just to get onto the internet and then store that on every device, that might create a little bit of a problem. This is very disappointing to hear, but I really do not want to dishearten everyone listening tonight, but because there are some things we definitely can do. Now, we have to look at a way forward, and the way that we can do this in Australia is look to the US and to big businesses globally, because the solution that is kind of airy-fairy that we're all talking about, it exists, it works, and it's successful. This technology is unfortunately withheld from Aussie parents because Google, Apple and Microsoft offer these safety tech developers access to this kind of technology, and they only offer these groups access. This tech is hack-proof and it's proven to work in managed device programs like they have in the US school system. This technology can filter adult content, it can hide adult images, it can also redirect children to safer, kid-friendly versions of websites and platforms, and it can also help manage screen time and so much more. So this technology does exist and there is in fact a solution. Parents and schools can also have a really seamless sharing of device policy control, so the rules at home can stop as soon as kids get onto campus and then school rules can then apply to that particular device. It's a very stark contrast to what we're seeing in Australia at the moment, where parents are given the reins but unfortunately have no control over their device. I will just check the clock there because that would have been about one incident that our team has responded to. So more frustratingly than this tech and it existing and us not having access to it is the fact that we would really, really love it. And obviously, all of you here, I would definitely urge you to contact your local members of parliament and demand, like we've mentioned here tonight, that government steps up and takes action and does something. Until then, we do have to work with what we've got. And like I said, there are some things we can do to minimise harm and exposure to our children. So our work clearly shows that this exposure to inappropriate content can be significantly reduced the earlier the education is brought on with our children. In Australia, that's about 3 years old, so the earlier that we can start a conversation about online safety and education, we can help mitigate some of the damages. If there's also strong boundaries in place, you know, having a tech-free dinner time or no phones in the car, let's just chat on the way to school when they can't go anywhere, absolutely. We have to work with what we've got to guardrail our children while we do wait with hope for government and big tech to step up. We also need to differentiate between parental controls and parental settings. I do urge all parents in the room to have some sort of parental control app in place. They are absolutely our first step in doing the right thing, but we need to not just rely on the parent settings. Parental control apps, they're stronger, they're easier to use, they also give you better visibility. They don't, like we know with Google and Apple, notify your child at 13 that they're now old enough and they can now bypass the parent control settings. Unfortunately, I'm very serious with that one. If you are here from a school or you're an educator in the field tonight, we do encourage parent and staff and also student education sessions. They are essential, they're proven to work, and they can really work to create a culture of change in cyber education safety. So there is a solution, and YSAFE does stand with you absolutely shoulder to shoulder as we all move to push for what our children deserve and what we want.
Thank you, Abby. I'm going to return to the panel and I'm going to ask you each just to share one practical thing you think is the best thing that these guys could take away tonight and do something with almost immediately. Mel, are we able to start with you?
Sure. I guess, as well as everything I've said tonight, one of the things that shocked me the most was the speed with which something can happen online, and some of the researchers I spoke to for the campaign, that was as little as 3 minutes that your child can be negatively impacted on social media. In Mac Holdsworth's case, it was 30 minutes. 30 minutes is all it took for a complete stranger, in his case, a 45-year-old man posing as a good-looking young woman, who saw his profile picture where his AFL body was on show, and the 45-year-old man approached him, and within 30 minutes he'd sent her an explicit picture. So for me, I guess it's, that was one of the big learnings for me, is that I thought maybe it took a lot longer than that, but it's just not the case. So for me, probably the one practical thing to take away would just be no phones in bedrooms, no phones in bathrooms. You know, when they're on social media, for you to be in the room at the very least, and to be having conversations about what they're looking at. Sorry, I'll just give one more, and it's confronting, but being honest with things that can happen to your children online. As part of this campaign, certainly my daughter's heard some shocking stories, but I haven't shied away from that. I've told her about Mac, I've told her about Tilly, and now she is talking to me about things that I don't think she would have spoken to me about necessarily. You know, the other day she said to me that there was a girl in her class who told her about a bullying incident in the US, and that this girl had ended her life. And I think she told me that because she knew about what I'd been reporting on. And she said to me, Mum, this girl in my class told me how she ended her life. And I said, oh, what was that? And she said, well, she hung herself. And I said, do you know what that means? And she didn't. And it was the biggest sigh of relief. I mean, other than the fact that I couldn't believe that they were talking about this at school in Year 6. It was a relief to me that she didn't know what it was, but then we had a really honest conversation, not about what it was, but about the importance of keeping our dialogue open, so that she knew that no matter what, she could speak to me about anything, and that there'd be no judgment, there'd be no anger, it would just be constructive and supportive. And so being honest, I think, is crucial.
Fantastic, yeah. And the power of a good question, even the naive question. Fantastic. Yeah. Sam, your turn.
This tip is for anyone who has teenagers, because it's who maybe feels like they've missed the boat, or like, is it too late to turn some stuff around. One of our experts, he calls them mate dates, but it was the game changer for me and my kids, where I felt like I had some ground that I had to kind of make up in terms of just open dialogue. So once a week, once my kids hit high school, I actually take them to breakfast, and we just have breakfast before school. I did that because I always know that I can do that. So like, my mornings don't have meetings. And part of the deal is that it's actually consistent. So I do it fortnightly. One week I take one daughter, the other week I take the other daughter. And when I first started doing that, the weirdest thing of sitting on the other side of your daughter, who was 13 at the time, and not actually having anything to talk about, because you realise that you haven't actually just sat with them. And we had to practice. Like, it was 3 or 4 times before the conversation really started, and that's where we learned to have a relationship. It was literally like half an hour. And now, like, through us and me just continue to, like, showing up to that, we just learned how to be together. Like, the whole idea is you do not have an agenda, you do not ask questions, you do not see this as an opportunity to talk about the fact that you're not picking up your towel. And I wasn't an angry mum that was all crazy at my kids. I was just a busy mum who was in doing mode all the time, and realised that I never sat with my kids with no agenda attached. And so through doing that with them, like, that was the single most game-changing thing that opened up the lines of communication and taught us how to be together, and that has flowed into the car conversations. And now, sometimes if I have to, like, I could drop that now and it wouldn't matter, because the relationship is there. But that's how I got that back. Every week, half an hour, we go to Starbucks, because Starbucks is the best for according to teenagers. They can order whatever they want within limits. It's simple stuff. Like, I just want to say, It's simple. Or it's playing handball with my son at night after dinner, because he loves it, just for in the house. Like, the answers for what our kids need is just us saying, I'll play that game with you, I'll play that handball with you, I'll sit and you can just have the, you know, like, that's what I've realised. That's all they want. It's simple, but I will also tell you that if you are not practiced and used to that, it will feel so bloody awkward and it will be really hard until it's not, and then it will be so beautiful. You'll think, oh my gosh, wow, it's really not that hard after all. But initially it is.
That's lovely. I think when we're busy, our conversations end up being very transactional, and just taking time to see and be pretty important things. So thank you. Jeff.
Thanks, Wade. So I'm going to pull this one from not personal experience, but my research. So 20 years, 10 studies. Each study's 1,200 people, 1,200 households, covering about 3,000 people overall in each study. So about 30,000 people. The thing I've learned after surveying Australians about their media use over that period of time is that there are two types of orientation to media: dysfunctional or functional. It's as simple as that. And the functional orientation to media is about doing all the things that we've talked about, taking all the precautions, and doing the very thing. I mean, there's a common theme to everything that we all keep saying about our own story, but it is about accepting that we have to regulate media and decide how to use them for our own context. And every household and every family will, of course, be different. At my household, based on having conversations with thousands of parents, there was no social media. We had a ban on social media. I have one social media account, if you don't count anything Google, and that's LinkedIn. And I basically asked my sons not to have any social media at the time. It was their school that asked them to go onto Facebook to do some assignment work. I was furious and went into the school and had a conversation about it. So I think not having a dysfunctional orientation to media means also accepting that they're not separate from us. We have to work out how to integrate and coordinate them for our own purposes as individual families. If we fear media and say that we will not, we will not have it ever, because I did say to my kids, 13 was the age at the time, that's when we'll have that conversation, not at age 11, which the school did. So it's very important to just embrace, educate, learn. I've got tons of quotes of parents saying, these are the good bits, these are the bad bits. Put them together, and when I start to think about them, I work out my path for best use.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much. Selena.
I get the last word. No, you do. So obviously, my solution is being seen, which is the cover of my book, 30 Years of Science. I travel the world to work out what causes mental illness, and it's not being seen between the ages of 0 and 3+. And we all want to be seen and loved, but mostly we're not. And so we pass that to our children because of that's how epigenetics works and multi-generational stuff works. So breaking the cycle, reparenting, and social media is just adding fuel to the fire. But in general, my sister got schizophrenia. There was no social media back then, but it's the same concept. She was not seen the way she needed to be seen, and that was going to be the book I wrote. I end up putting the phone on the cover because it's a 2024 issue that's massive and needs dealing with immediately. So kids copy us because of mirror neurons, so we have to put down screens between us, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a parent, whether it's anyone in our community, put down phones and devices between us and other people in the real world. Don't say, I'm just going to spend a minute texting this person. It hurts people. They'd feel it. It's a brain development issue, and that's why we're all becoming emotionally dysregulated, getting social anxiety, and not showing up. So it's the key. It's a simple message. Why we're calling it Scene Forum, Scene Conversations, why the documentary is called Scene. It's because we all need to start seeing each other, building back our village of support, and don't feel isolated. You've just heard a bunch of solutions. Reach out to us, join us. You are not alone in your struggle. Please reach out. Don't feel like we're giving up on our kids. We're not ever giving up on our children just because we've got this big, massive technology front that we're dealing with. We're going to solve this issue, and you're part of that solution.
There's so much more we could talk about. I feel like we've just got started, but we have started. We've started a conversation. We've met some people around you who have similar interests, and hopefully that can be the start of something that is quite useful to you. To help us along the way, we've had a magnificent panel. Melanie, Sam.
Can I just say something really quickly? Over on the table where Selena's book is, we actually have a managing technology at home course that we've developed for Parent TV that you guys can just have access to for free. There's a flyer with a QR code. You just need to scan it, and you can take the flyer like I printed 100. So just take it. It's totally free. There's some great stuff in there about conversations to have with your kids and things that you can do. And there's also another flyer for the Scene documentary. If that looks interesting, you can scan that and just put your email address in, and you'll be notified when it becomes available.
All around regulation of screen time. Is there such a thing as healthy screen time? Let's have a stab at that.
Do you want to do? Yeah. I was on the ABC today. A woman just published a paper, a meta-analysis of 100 studies, and what she showed, she came up with 4 things. One is that we need to be with our children on a screen, and if they're going to be on a screen, because they have to be because of homework and all sorts of other things. The WHO has put out some guidelines. You can go and find them. No babies should be on screens until 2 years of age, minimum. It's affecting and changing their brain development. All the papers are starting to flow. For example, in JAMA Pediatrics just published, they did an amazing big study demonstrating in adolescent boys just the checking behaviour, and we're using AI to show you the content and how much they're on screens, just the checking behaviour causing ADHD-induced symptoms 6, 12 and 24 months later, depending on low checking, moderate checking and high checking. So research takes ages to be published, and they love mixed messages that there's no problem, it's all out. The papers, scientific papers, take 5 to 10 years because of funding, ethics. It's coming. The papers are coming, just like smoking in the 80s. I used to smoke in the 80s. Didn't know it was going to kill me. Everyone was doing it. I tell you, as a pharmacist, we're going to have black box warnings. And even if a drug has a slight effect, like I worked on a drug in America called Champex. When someone died from being on that drug, we didn't know it was exactly the drug. We had to put a black box warning label to say that this could cause harm. When I'm a pharmacist and I give out drugs, I have to tell you this is going to help your blood pressure, but guess what? It also has these side effects for some people. We need those warnings out there. We need to understand what we're dealing with. We need more education and awareness, and we need it together. So healthy screen time is the minimal amount, because the way the baby's brain develops is by being outside in nature, playing in the sand pit with their mates. Because we're social species, it's the only way we really learn, and learn really rapidly.
Can I riff off of that, Selena?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So the eyes are also, so boys are a problem, first of all. Their eyes form much more slowly than girls' eyes, so it takes them till the age of 5 so they can actually see it at near distance properly, which is why a lot of boys have reading disorders. But part of that is exacerbated by screens early on. The answer to the question on 2 hours of screen time, absolutely right. That's what the WHO says. There's a quantity issue, and then there's a frequency issue, and then there's a quality issue. I would reframe the question, are there some things that you wouldn't want any screen time for? And then start there and think of what are the good things that you can get access to that will help development, like, positive, cooperative stories and that sort of thing.
Thank you. Take a couple more questions. Yes? We're done. But let's talk about iPads in schools for a moment. iPads in schools, especially primary schools?
Yeah.
What do we think?
What was the question again?
What about iPads in schools, but especially primary schools?
All right. So I think iPads and screens in schools are important for device literacy, and they can be regulated in the school, and the proper messaging can go to students about their use. That's an opportunity, but as we've just said, that time has to be limited, and I would argue that if you're only on iPads all day long in school, that's a problem. You need to also remember that books still exist. More books are printed today than ever before in human history. Read the books as well as use the iPad. Make sure you're on the iPad for no more than 50 minutes at a time.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. In the US with Korea, I interviewed Tim Levy yesterday on my podcast, and basically there's 24 million students in America with their technology on an enterprise solution where the schools buy the equipment and then put on the enterprise technology that completely, utterly blocks all the sites. So that's a huge, we don't have that in Australia because we have home devices that can't be regulated in the same way. So that's a whole other conversation that I'd love to see happen so we can use the advantages. But it's what I want to see, and I put this into the submission, is I want to see a TGA level regulation where we know absolutely, every parent, school person here knows for absolutely certain that there's some protection there, that their children aren't accessing accidentally very violent and highly sexualized and all sorts of other material quickly, and that's, we could do that straight away if we really wanted to, but we could also bring in government or whatever funded devices that have enterprise technology, like you do in universities, banks and other things. We could do that tomorrow if we were able to bring those devices into the schools, basically.
Thank you. And we are out of time, and it does feel like we're just getting started, but thanks to our panel, Mel, Sam and Jeff. Would you put your hands? Thank you much. And to the amazingly passionate Selena, would you thank her so much for her time? And over to you.
So thank you, Wade, for your contribution to Queensland and Brisbane and to raising our students. Thank you so much. Really, really grateful. And thank you for being here tonight to moderate our panel. It's made a really big difference and also allowed us to see and bring educators here because we want to work together. It's a village societal thing we're talking about here. It's not just on parents, it's not just on teachers, it's not on schools, it's on all of us, our community and our society. What country do we want to become? We need more love. We need more connection. People are yearning for connection. When you see someone homeless, or there are so many places you can reach out to help people. If we want a society that we want to be part of in the future, we have to start being seen and seeing others and giving things that we have ourselves that we don't need. So please come and meet us. You have lots of support. There's so much you can do. In my book, I write about tons of things around reparenting, around Socratic questioning, becoming that confident parent that I was not, and all sorts of other things that you can do to make yourself feel good enough so that you can give that to your kids. They're yearning for connection, attention, and physical love. I can't say it and stress it highly enough. We all want to feel loved and connected, and that's the answer. Being seen is the silver bullet you're looking for. It's bloody hard to do because of brain wiring and all the rest, but it's totally possible. We'll be emailing you all of the resources that we talked about in a PDF afterwards, so you'll have them, so you don't have to worry about all these damn QR codes, etc. And please note that my audiobook is available to you. Simone Feeler, who's here from Brisbane Audio, up the back there, she spent 18 hours with me while I recorded that. And we cried, and we laughed, and we sang, and we got it out to you before this event. And I was listening to it on an aeroplane heading to Indonesia for a wedding, and the last chapter finished, and I'm not going to tell you the bottom line, but she said to me, "Oh my God, Selena, that's a bit of a twist." And I said, "I know, but no one reads anymore, so they won't get to that part." But I feel very proud of this. I've spent 30 years of my life, since 1989, when my sister was in a lockup ward in North Brisbane, and she was given a terrible diagnosis. They said she'd never get over it, and I stopped being a pharmacist. I retrained. I wanted to know why, and I worked it out, and it's being seen, everyone. And it's not just for social media and connection. This is for mental health for life. This is depression, this is anxiety, this is schizophrenia, this is bipolar, you name it. I can tell you all about it, and I've written about it in my book. And there is tons of solutions because the brain is neuroplastic, resilient, and strong. Don't give up on your kids. You can learn how to be the parent you want to be at any time. You can be 100 if you want, and that happens too. Together, tonight, we had 600 people come, register online or watch. If each of you just bring 10 people to a conversation and be seen, immediately we're at 5,000. And we already have schools reaching out to us to have seen conversations using their PNCs. It doesn't take much. You've heard so many simple solutions here. 50,000, 500,000, 5 million. We're only 25 million people in this country. We can have seen, we can be seen, we can help other people feel and be seen. And I invite you, my community, my village, my Brisbane, I grew up here, please, let's create the country that we wish we had, not the country we think we should be going towards. And the journey starts with the first 10. We invite you to take this message and spread it to your community, your schools, your clubs. Please start forming these circles. People want your love. They need your love. And the most important thing, we are so much stronger together because we're a social species, and our children need our presence more than ever because of technology factors. Thank you so much. I want to thank Jeff Brand and Bond Uni because they made a contribution tonight to bring the AV and live stream, and also to QUT. I'm a professor there. They gave me some time. And also Simone Long and Kobe Lee. So Simone Long is the QUT School Engagement. Cybernetic Shield, Jean Yates, for being here and helping support our mission. We're not giving up. We're just beginning. Have a wonderful evening.